Welcome to Reunderstood, where we challenge perspectives and rethink what we think we know.
It's me, Ibrahim.
And me, Mirko.
Together, we explore ideas, break down complex topics, and share insights from our own experiences. Let's dive in and rediscover the world, one conversation at a time.
Hello, everybody.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is episode 5 of Reunderstood. We're back.
And we are ready to fire again on all cylinders.
I saw that we've hit about a month in concept. Can you believe that it's been a month that we've been doing this?
I can't believe, but I'm happy to hear that fire is going.
We survived 1 month.
Yeah.
Now, there was a couple of episodes that we actually lost in the process because of some technical difficulties. So when I was going through the data for looking at how well we did in the first month, the numbers are not indicative of how well we could have done if we had 4 complete episodes. So they're not terrible numbers, but it's going to give us a good baseline now to make sure that we're always hitting these values. And I think of it as we can even, I'm going to take like a frame or a screenshot of each of our socials to show this is where we started. Because you see people doing this before, I don't know, on their socials where they're like before and after. Where they started with that kind of point. And this is what I'm doing right now. I'm capturing the before picture.
Nice. Yeah, it's great to see the movements, and now it's getting more exciting and more, let's say, demanding in a way. Demanding in terms of expectations. You want to be better. You want to see the results of your effort, and I think, but still, the biggest impact is our lives, and I think it's good also to reflect on our life. Do we see any changes? Because when we record the podcast, I'm also a listener. I'm a faithful listener as well. And I like, and sometimes even the words that I say, I rethinking them, as the purpose of this podcast is. Sometimes it's just to review and to remind yourself. And sometimes it's very good advice, and I like it.
Yeah, wow, that was a great point. Yeah, I'm happy with how I said that.
Yeah, and I think this is the value of seeing what you said, like what we said before, like the memory. We often lose memory of the things, of the events, of achievements. But when you have it recorded, you can go back, you can see. And that I needed this. Maybe sometimes again later in the future. So it's like advice to your older self.
That's good. Yeah.
But I like it.
That's awesome. Because so often I feel like we would, if we just took our own advice, our lives would be so much better.
Yeah.
Because we always pretty much know what we need to be doing. And here, it's like you can talk about it, and we both know, and we can talk about it in a kind of abstract way where we're like, people should do this, you should do that.
Yeah.
And then I'll watch that back later and think, wait a minute, I need to be doing all those things.
Yeah. And I was thinking, you know what? It's easy to sit here and talk about anything, right? Being smart, word smart, but you need to do smarter as well. And this is, everybody has those challenges, and we have to walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Absolutely. This is a big shift I'm trying to make, because words are cheap, right? It's like you can talk about stuff, you can say you're going to do things, but more and more I'm starting to value action over preparation, anticipation, or research. These are the things that really matter now. We still good?
Yeah.
Did you actually hit record?
I just double check. I wasn't sure. Time is going.
But yeah, I'm trying to be more action oriented now, as opposed to researching or contemplating as my old habits used to be. And it's a tough one, because the uncertainty of doing things without knowing that you've prepped enough is scary. You want to think, I just need a little bit more information, and then I'll know for sure this is the right thing to do.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I mentioned to you that I'm looking for some roles, potential to change the career.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah. Happy to get into this. I could talk about this all day.
Yeah. And as I was going through some recruitment processes, I got some. It's interesting how these processes are developing, and one of the companies, they have like a gamified assessment, which was very nice. It was like 3 games, and in each game, different set of skills are required, and it was interesting to get the feedback afterwards.
What feedback did you get?
So in terms of cognitive abilities,
psychosymmetric analysis.
Maybe. I don't know. Asking too much. But those who are creating those, they would know what kind of analysis is. But it was about cognitive, about tactical, and also what was interesting point. I'm quite analytical person, and I need the information to make decisions. And they say try to make decisions not based on all the information that you have, but just on the hint, right? What do you think it might be good in this decision? So start with something small. What you said earlier, like I need to do many things before I do actions. Same myself as well. And they said try to do some smaller decisions, like basically deciding which movie you want to watch. I always have to see the trailer, the description, and then, oh, okay, that will capture my attention and I like the genre or theme. And then based on this, I'm making decisions. Or food, dishes, right? Trying something new. We always make decisions based on the ingredients that we like, dislike, textures that are familiar, to our mouth. And this is also relating to your challenge of testing new things. And I think that this is something that it's very simple, it's not painful, and then you can increase the promptness of decisions, and you will see on smaller decisions that it's not so bad, and you don't need to wait for so long to make some decisions. I'm thinking that's helpful approach.
That's a great point. I was reading this analysis. Do you remember the Apollo 11 crash?
Mm-hmm.
So prior to the spaceship taking off, they had 23 space shuttles take off successfully, no problems. And in the process of launching the last one, there were a few variables that were a little bit different compared to the previous shuttles that had taken off. And one of them was that one of the engineers, there's O-rings that connect the boosters with the jet engine to the main shuttle. There's like little rubber rings that seal the gap between the two. And after their testing, some of them left a little bit of soot, like a black dust afterwards. And the engineers were reviewing this. And when the engineers brought them to their managers, the managers were like, all right, can you provide the conclusive data on what this is and what the effects of it are going to be? And the people who found the mark were like, well, I can't read it. It's just something, it's like an anomaly. And they're like, well, it doesn't count. Unless you're prepared to back up every point and decision and presentation with appropriate data and reasoning, then it doesn't count. Right. Well, fair argument. Turns out that what that black soot was an indication that there was a slight leakage in those O-rings. So that when the temperatures dropped a little bit low, acceptable levels the next morning when the shuttle was going to take off, they expanded enough to let the jet fuel leak through, and the entire shuttle erupted and 11 people died. Now, in the investigation after that, when they were interviewing all the different employees about what went wrong, NASA has this overarching theme that we encourage adversarial debate, and you have to be able to logically reason and provide the arguments for every decision or proposal you have. And in that specific case, they couldn't do it. They said, oh, it's just like an anomaly. I don't know why it's there. And like, we don't really have any reason for it. So discard it. And so this is where I come back to now thinking the rigid systems we have in thinking about things, like we always need things to be analytical. I need to know all the information, so blah, 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 all this stuff. In certain circumstances, it's actually counterproductive to have that kind of thinking. Logically, I used to think more information is never bad. I need to have the systematic process of doing this, but sometimes having that intuition and thinking, all right, I'm going to be more flexible in my thinking. I don't need all the information. I don't need to have everything backed up by data and reason. Sometimes I'm just going to take something for as it is and use my intuition and judgment to kind of extrapolate what I believe to be right.
Yeah. And often we think, oh yeah, I'm a spontaneous person.
Is that how you describe yourself? If I asked your wife, would she describe you the same way?
Yeah, that's, I don't know. That's always a good question. What other things people think about others? But yeah, in a way, I'm thinking like, oh yeah, I'm creative, so ergo I am also spontaneous, but it's not necessarily. I think creativity also comes from having enough data. And then, because to create something, you need some tool. Let's call it that way, regardless what kind of tool it is. And you need to know how to use that tool. Or, of course, how are you getting knowledge of this when you were a kid? You were just scribbling on the paper, and you were seeing what kind of effects this pencil is having on the paper. And based on that, as you are growing, as you are having more informations, then your any shapes are becoming meaningful, and therefore later on you see an artist and is having some amazing exhibition. So that's why we are collecting information, and different techniques are also allowing you to combine them, merge them, and then you are developing maybe your own technique. So that's about creativity. It's same like when you are getting information about new topic and people are asking you, do you have any questions? Rarely I have any questions because it's something new. I didn't have time to process it as much and to, see how is this, you know, impacting my thoughts, and are any questions arising from that. So that's why we need experience to become creative in a way. And then spontaneity, I would say it's two steps ahead of creativity, because you are exposing yourselves to things that you haven't planned, and you are seeing how are things affecting you, and based on this data you can do things.
That's a good point. Marco, I think your microphone's a little bit further away from you.
Okay, we'll become close.
No, I'm saying you can pull the mic.
Yeah, I know.
So, but so I like that point you made, and I'm gonna refute it a little bit about the creativity one. Right now, let's say if I'm thinking of creativity, and you say you need certain amounts of experience for it to be possible, essentially, right, or viable, because you need the input to be able to have an output. There isn't enough. You don't have enough reference points. All you can do is draw basic shapes like squares and circles and triangles, like a kid does, right? So you need a certain level of input. Now, are there examples of people at various ages, far younger than you and I, who are capable of demonstrating extraordinary levels of creativity? Of course, right? People of everyone from children savants, all the teenagers, people in their 20s, capable of extraordinary levels of creativity, not just in arts and business and just ways of thinking, right, in every domain. Now, to what extent are the inputs that they've had in their life up to that point so vastly different from the normal person that they now have the prerequisite tools to have this creative output? Because I don't imagine they're living an existence that's so far removed from the normal person that now they essentially have been given access to a plethora of knowledge that lets them be this creative. Maybe it's just their mind, or they're able to construct their thoughts or direct them in certain ways where the same information that they have in their head, as everyone does, they're not able to contort and twist that and output it in a way that is completely unique.
Yeah, that's where it comes to IQ. When someone say, "Oh, he's slow," the person is obviously faster, and I would say that ability to connect things faster, see how they're related to each other, is allowing someone to, I don't know, master piano at 4 years of age, and someone, struggling with some basic things later down their life.
So sure, there's a genetic component to it,
Yeah.
but even if we disregard the arguments that we're making, right? Let's another approach I can take for this is that when I believe something, it has to go through one really important filter, which is that, is this belief going to limit or expand my worldview and my capability in there? Now, if I was to believe that my creativity is limited by the inputs that I've had, that means in any new endeavor I go into, my first thought would be, I don't have enough information to be sufficiently creative here. That does not serve me in any way. If instead I went into a new project thinking, all right, I don't have all the information, but that doesn't affect how creative I can be. I have a vast array of different sources I can draw on, unique experiences that other people would covet, that they don't possess, that I can figure out a way to manipulate and work into different angles of creativity. So even just from that angle alone, that thinking of having a prerequisite amount of creativity or experience is incompatible with how I fundamentally do things.
What you said, it's related to attitude. Are you willing to still grab unknown things and fight with them as you go along, or you are like a master planner and then you go into the battle with this? So, or maybe never even go because you are too afraid of it, or too much, analysis paralysis. So that's why attitude helps you to to go there and like a spontaneity, right? Okay, no worries. I haven't tried that. Let's go. Let's try. Your attitude that you have, trying something new, exposing yourselves to the self. It's like a, I wouldn't say forced spontaneity, but like you are pushing yourselves to be somewhere where you haven't been. And if we are just waiting for strange things to happen to us, waiting, sitting in this room, nothing will happen. You have to go through those doors. You have to expose yourself, meet people, meet events, and that this is where you grow, and this is where it's helping you to expand your mind and be understand yourself of what things are you capable.
Definitely. It's and I haven't always been this way. That's the other side of this, is this is an attitude that I have had to cultivate. And I was on the other side. I was very fearful and afraid of new things and the unknown spaces. So this is something that has been deliberately built over years, because sometimes I will hear someone say, I'm not athletic, all these definitions that are not biological. You're not born as a genetic introvert. This is a label that you've started to carry from an early age. And then do you see adults now who will say, oh, I can't go up and do that. I'm an introverted person. And I'll think, well, you don't have an introvert gene. So how have you come to this conclusion? Some experience along the way has led you to believe that your personality is congruent with an introvert personality. And so now you're carrying that story around. But the important thing that I think a lot of people miss is that this story is completely flexible. At any point, at any day, you can wake up and decide, I'm a different person now. The introvert can just as easily tomorrow decide, today I will be an extrovert. It's as easy as that. Now, the resistances in making that a reality are a little bit difficult, but as long as you're willing to accept the possibility of rewriting that story, it makes your life so much more flexible rather than thinking I have to fit into a small box, into places where only introverts can survive.
They say even introverts are extroverts in the right conditions.
That's a good one. I like that.
Yeah. It's about around whom are you feeling comfortable, and this is it's nobody is born to be alone for the rest of their life, and the decisions they or like the label that they put on themselves is just the uh, events that they have been and they didn't see that they fit there, and they say, oh, it's not for me, and then you are creating wall around yourself, and suddenly you are just isolated just because the events that you were facing, they weren't in your favor, and maybe you were hurt or something. It wasn't, you didn't reason with that to the degree, right, that is working for you.
That's it. It's funny how even from an early age you can have some maybe negative experience, and then that starts a cascading effect of a story you're now going to tell yourself. Maybe something like you had a bad experience at gym class in school, and then from then on you decide, no, I'm not really a sporty person. I don't really like that kind of stuff, just because of that one bad experience. And you go through your entire life not willing to explore your physicality or different exercises or movement because you're like, it's not really me.
Yeah.
And it's just stemmed from that single experience. Now, that's maybe a bit of an extreme example, but I think that is ultimately how most of our identity is formed, where we have experiences and then we tell ourselves a story about what that experience means to us. And the sporty or introverted is an extreme example, but you can think of it in even more nuanced terms about things like patience or independence. All these things stem from the story we tell ourselves about how we see ourselves, our self-image essentially, where some experience from the past will tell us, all right, you know what, I'm not really enjoying this, I'm impatient, I'm not liking this, therefore I'm not, and I have to stick this script. So in the future, if you're in that similar circumstance, you're like, yeah, I'm still not enjoying this. I have to be congruent with what I believe I am.
Yeah. It's hard to break the mold of the beliefs that you are building over the time.
Do you think with age it gets easier or harder to think differently or have this mental flexibility? For you personally?
Yeah. For me personally, I don't see as I take what works for me and keep exploring to I want to know more options. What world has to offer? That was my attitude from the young age. I was always going there and trying to learn something new to just explore the world. That was always my motto in a way, right? And I wouldn't say it's age. It's always about, are you happy with happy, or are you content with where you are, and how courageous are you to break this if you're not happy?
But you agree that the older you get, the more often you've done the same thing, and then the harder it is to do something differently. Harder. I tell you from a biological perspective, it's this idea of cognitive entrenchment, where if your brain fires enough synapses in the same neural pathway, those pathways gets deeper and deeper entrenched into your brain. So that means that particular pathway becomes much easier to do than another one.
Yeah.
So there's a physiological response here in doing the same things over and over again that get embedded as you age.
Yeah. Because you did it many times, it's just the known path.
That's right. And the path gets more and more deeply ingrained to your psyche. So from that perspective, as someone who's spent 10 extra years on this planet than I have, are you feeling that effects of the path getting entrenched, or are you resisting it?
The path getting entrenched in the areas that I want to get entrenched.
In the beliefs that you hold
Yeah,
just
yes, yeah.
strongly.
Exactly. So we know there are certain things that we see as absolute and certain things that we see as relevant, right? And that's why it just, if you don't see something as absolute true, then you are willing to explore the things. And then in certain situations, even things that you see absolute, when there is something very, very strong, it will change your mind. It will kick you out of the rails, and you will have, you hopefully will have another rails to hold, or
I'm curious, what are your absolutes?
my absolutes are about belief.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but you're talking about faith.
Yeah, exactly.
Can you elaborate on that?
So I know that there is a God, and I believe that the Bible is one and only word that is helping you to guide you through the life. Is telling you about the God, who God is, what is His purpose for our lives as well. And I think this is one of the very important questions, because if we don't know directions, we are lost. And this helped me from young age. And even though I grew up in a Christian family, I had some time after teenage, early 20s, when I won't say wandering, but I was exploring other things. And then I've seen that those things don't bring me a level of satisfaction or fulfillment as the knowing God and walking with Him gives. And I'm not saying that after that the ride was smooth. It wasn't, because every life, when you stick to something, life will throw at you something that doesn't align with your beliefs, some situations, and you will. It's always test of your beliefs or of your integrity, and they say, just like, okay, some people who became Christians, your path doesn't become smooth. It becomes more rough. It's just because now you are sticking in a way to other people who have different values, and yeah.
Mervo, I don't know if the sound was selected on this.
Sound. Why?
Because you have to select the recording mic. Under audio, what does it say?
Guys, audio settings system default.
Okay,
No.
that's not right. Stop the recording because you can't change it.
A few moments later, when Mirko connected microphones.
All right, we're reporting.
We're recording. Second time.
Let's go again.
Oh no, we got this.
You should clip that, and we'll make a montage of both of us just clapping, and then that can be our new intro. Just cut together really quickly, like
A crowd in the background.
no one wants to hear preaching.
Yeah.
Because for a start, we don't have any authority or credibility on here. So it's just two guys. So what can we rely on? Well, we can rely on our authenticity, our unique personalities and character, experiences and stories.
Yeah.
Because anyone can relate to that. Whereas if I'm out here saying people should do this, and then people are, well, who are you? Right? You're just like some guy sitting in a random podcast studio. Why am I going to listen to this guy?
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the things that's going to help us.
What is usually compelling is people's experiences, how they went through some difficulties, and their takeaways, or how it changed them, how it changed others. Those things are almost unique to you, to me, to every individual, and that's why it's unseen movie, untold
This,
script.
yeah, I've heard this idea of expressed in a way that what do you think an interesting person is? And maybe sometimes we'll think of an interesting person as someone who goes to fancy parties. They have lots of experiences. They know famous people. They maybe do crazy things. All of these external things that we think an interesting person does, right? But I think it was Alan Watts. He's a more of a contemporary philosopher, and he says it is none of those things. In fact, the interesting person is someone who can convey what it means to be themselves, that unique experience of reality to someone else effectively enough so that the other person has a brief glimpse into what it might be like to be another person.
Wow.
I love that expression. That's such a good. So often, I'll maybe try not directly or deliberately to be interesting by saying, "Oh, I've done this, all this," like piling it on his this. But I think if that person can't connect with anything that I'm saying, to the experiences I'm having, none of it matters. And this comes back to what we were talking about last time with communication, with effectively being able to convey your experiences, thoughts, feelings, ideas in such a way that is bespoke to that person, and then they can receive it well enough for them to connect with you.
It's mastery of being able to speak the language of other person.
Oh, I like that. Is that off the top of your head?
Yeah.
I'll clap for that one.
I'll take it.
That was good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you do need a good read of other people, like an astute awareness of a person's temperament, their style of communication, because then you'll think, all right, I'm going to adjust my approach here and use the right words, the tone, the pacing, so that my words are received in the right way.
Yeah. Who is your audience? What's important to them? Can they relate to this? Are they in the middle of where you have been? There is so many things that, and then like it's sad in a way when you say, "Oh, we don't have anything in common. It was a boring meeting, boring date, or something." Like you are two unique people on this world. Like yours probably different in so many ways, and like how come there was nothing to talk about, nothing to be excited about?
I know. That's a great point, actually. And my framing in situations like that is I was not able to get the right information out of that person. So I come away from an experience. Very rarely will I say, "Oh, that he was boring," or "I didn't really connect with him because we had nothing in common, nothing." That I'll say, I couldn't really figure out how to communicate well enough, or I couldn't get the person to relax enough to get them to open up with me. Because everyone, I think, objectively has these unique stories and experiences, but too often there's a lot of resistance to getting them out.
Yeah.
And it is an art to make people feel comfortable and open enough to be willing to share that information.
Are you willing to be vulnerable in front of others, showing them that you're a human being, you have challenges, and this helps others to relate to you, because when you share challenges, like most likely they faced similar challenge sometimes in the past, and this is straight away one topic where you can say, "Oh yeah, similar thing happened to me," and that's why another thing is questions. Are you asking good questions? Are you really engaged? So when you have interest about something, then your brain will start working more about this, and it will various things will come up. Oh, what about this? What about that? Yesterday I had at my work, I got training in new department, and as I was walking behind my colleague who was explaining, and I was like, okay, now I have to be interested about this, to be able to get as much information and to be able to leverage his support while I have it.
Do you find that frustrating or annoying, having to be interested in things that you don't inherently have an interest in?
I would just say that might be initial thing, and it's up to us to push this and to be engaged, and then you will be able to to benefit from anything. Sometimes, okay, at work this is relevant to me and is useful to me, and I need to be engaged in order to perform well in the future. But sometimes we are, let's say, at some meetings or speaking with some person, and this person seems boring. But I think it's important to look at it from this way. This might be helpful to me sometimes in the future, even though at this immediate moment I don't have any benefit from this. But like, let me hear them. Let me give them a chance.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I suppose when you're working for yourself, everything can be self-motivated because it serves the long-term goal. But with the job, it can be tricky because for a lot of people, a job is just a job. And so the underlying motivation of it leading to some long-term goal is not necessarily there. And I think that's where a lot of the frustration of employment comes from. It's because there is no end sight and you're having to do all these things that you don't really want to do, which aren't inherently bad. Like I said, like if you're running a business, every day is doing things you don't want to do, but you're willing to push through it in that circumstance because you know the long-term goal calls for it. But with a job, that's not necessarily there. So for me personally, that's how I felt a lot of the time when I've been in jobs. It's that I couldn't see the long-term vision because I couldn't see myself in employment. So a lot of the things that the job required of me, I would kind of resent it because I think, well, this is asking more from me than what my paycheck technically is giving. And now why would I do essentially charity work if I don't see myself climbing the ladder and committing years of my life to this? Everything felt like very transactional for me. That's why it was tricky for me to progress, and eventually I had to kind of call that quit.
Mm. Yeah, it's hard when people are not related, not going in the same directions, don't see anything how this current situation might benefit them. And at the moment, I'm also having challenges at work, but challenges in terms of more like internal challenges, where my skill is and what's required for me. So often you might think, oh, you know what, this is too much, as you said as well. And just as I was driving to Manchester today, I was watching another video from Napoleon Hill, and it's like
From
Napoleon Hill. He has
Think and Grow Rich?
many books, but this was just one of his speeches, and it was talking about these things like when you want something, the path to that achievement, let's go that way, or to that goal, whatever it is, it's the things that you don't want to are in front of you, and the way to get there where you want to be is to go over those things. So you just have to be better, and we want to, let's say you want to be successful, ultra successful. What's the cost of going there? You have to eat many frogs, as there are many, many things that are not, you're not, it doesn't work for you. It makes you very, very uncomfortable. It makes you want to quit. It's just like those days are here. And as I was also looking now to change careers, I'm thinking, is this kind of job something that I want to do every day, day in, day out? It's very tricky when you start thinking about this, because in a way you can get demotivated, like this is not the thing that I want to do day in, day out. But when you see your past, your work, or everything that you did so far, it's day in, day out, you were repeating those activities, maybe sometimes in the less or more frequent, but everything what we achieved is based on repetition.
Yeah. That's an interesting one you talked about here about, can you see yourself doing this forever? And that was the framing I used to have when I went into things, and it would put a lot of pressure on the situation because I would think it's all or nothing right now. Am I ready to give my life up for this chum? And I was like, wait a minute, because there's a few things that are wrong with that way of thinking. First of which is, you don't know what it's going to feel like when you're there. You might love it, you might hate it, you might find it okay, but without having that data, all of it is conjecture, and you making plans in anticipation. This is just complete guesswork. So already, this is a bad move. Another one, as you go further along in it, most likely your enjoyment and the opportunities and possibilities you can see in there are going to open up drastically because you're at the uninformed pessimism or optimism, whatever it's going to be. So that all of your judgments, your forecasts and predictions you're making at this point, you lack the critical knowledge of experience to be able to anticipate where this might go. So the question, is this something I'm going to do for the rest of my life, is impossible to be answered right now. I just do not have the data for it. And now, instead of having that frame and I take on new projects, I'll just think, I want to try this. I'll commit to it for a while. I'll see what the resistance is like, what the feedback is like. And I'll be very honest about if I want to quit at some point. Is it because I'm quitting, I don't want to do the hard work? Or is it that I'm quitting because it's a misalignment in where I'm trying to go?
Yeah.
And having that makes decisions like what projects I take on, what jobs, all this stuff, so much more manageable because I've got this framework now where it's no longer my head, which is always catastrophizing everything. It's like, what if you hate it from day one? What if on this, what if, like, no, we're not doing that anymore. And I have a logical way to think about these decisions.
Yeah, it's if you frame it wrongly, it can be scary. If you frame it correctly, you can just see, okay, this job or this role, what kind of skills are required from me to perform well. And if mastering those skills is helping you to get
long term,
yes, then it's worth.
There you go.
So
I mean, I accidentally fell into this with going into sales because I didn't realize, I was not thinking at the time what kind of long-term vision. I was just out of university. I was like, I don't know, I kind of like talking to people, so I'll try some sales. But I got very lucky in realizing that having that skill to sell and speak to people is going to be hugely helpful in the long-term goals that I've got. But yeah, I lost my train of thought there.
Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, so with that in mind, now you're contemplating a move into sales.
Yeah.
Given that you already have 4 episodes of successful communication with me, I think this is going to be like a sure thing for you. Meaning you've demonstrated an ability to have clear communication with someone. I mean, technically you're not selling, but at the end of this episode and every episode, I'm practically sold. So if that's worth anything, you can show the potential recruiter the videos and be like, here's my CD.
guys, what are you waiting there? I'm your guy to go to. No, it's
But anyway, the question, so you go into sales or potentially contemplating going to sales, right? The big question is going to be, how does sales or maybe the skills you'll get from it align with your long-term goals, or does it in any way?
it will help in a way to concisely convey the message, address the need, and if this person has the problem which I can help them, then I have to give my best to them not to give up.
Yeah.
That's my understanding. It's you need to understand what are the needs in every conversation, every relationship. You need to hear the person. And this is the foundation of anything good that can come out of it.
That's it. I've done countless sales calls, and asking, like you said earlier, good questions is a really big one because it helps uncover information that you previously didn't have access to, especially if it's questions that your prospect hasn't considered themselves either, because then they'll think, hold on a second, maybe this is a pain point or a problem that my business wasn't aware of. And that ties into things like doing enough research in who you're speaking with. So even when I come up to this podcast, I treat this kind of like a sales call where I'll look through some of the material, the previous recordings we've done, and I'll think about what kind of things you've talked about. I'll think, all right, I'll remember that bit, I'll remember that bit. It's basically like a prospect call where I'm trying to remember different details that I can touch on during the conversation. And that way I've got basically more ammunition to direct the conversation in the way that I want.
Yeah. That's great. Is this something that you used in your sales role before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was doing door-to-door sales for a while. So like going to knocking on doors, trying to sell things. And I did that for a while. And that teaches you really good communication because people hate being approached physically cold. That's even worse than cold outreach is cold physical outreach. Because people are like, you're now in my space, unannounced. Why are you here?
Get out of here.
I know. So within the first, I would say like 10 seconds, you know how the conversation's going to go. Based on their body language, based on the tone, you end up picking up on intonations in their voice where someone's like, hello, 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 all these different hellos. I'm like, okay, I know where this is going to go. And then you have to recalibrate instantly. You can't say, all right, give me a minute. Let me think about what I'm going to say. You have to be like, let's go. That's it.
Yeah.
And you do that over and over and hundreds of times. There were some days where I would go and get like, I think it was like 100 no's or something. No's, 100. Maybe it's like 60, 17 people say no. And I would tell myself, it's going to be the next one. And I will say that again over and over again. It's going to be the next one. And the rule I had was you're not allowed to stop before 100. And pretty much always I got something before 100. Because you can go through entire dead spells where nothing sticks. And that's really the tricky part for most people when they're in sales, is to deal with that much rejection. Because you'll think, I've got 60 no's in a row. A normal person would stop right now. Right? Like logically, you should really stop. But in the back of your head, you got to know, all right, I'm unaffected by these no's. I'm just going to keep going because at some point, someone has to say yes. And it was that kind of blind faith and trust in what I was doing that I think really helps in most things in life, where the persistence and repetition, like I was saying earlier, just pays off if you can commit to it for long enough.
How was this experience during the door-to-door? Was it, how did that help you to, beside persistence, right? Was there anything else, any other challenges or any other rewards that you gained during this period doing door-to-door?
I learned presentation is very important. When I would do door-to-door, I would wear a 3-piece suit. So waistcoat, formal trousers, and blazer. Whereas sometimes people might just go like a shirt and tie or something. Because when people look at you, they've already made 10 different assumptions before you've even opened your mouth. And when you're approaching cold, you need every single help you can get in order to build that trust and credibility to tipping point, essentially. And physical appearance is such a big one. So this was only through trial and error I realized, all right, people treat me differently if I'm looking better. So now I need to make sure. And it was only by accident, because there was one day where I went out and I wasn't as good as usual and completely ignored. People just did not look at me like I had anything worthwhile to say. So I took that feedback. I was like, looks like it really makes a big difference. So next time I went out, I dressed up really proper. And it's not like people were like, yes, I'm buying right now. It was more like, I now have 2 more seconds of someone's time.
Yeah.
So now that I think, all right, 2 more seconds, let's stay. And I was trying to tweak other things. I would think eye contact, really important. So I'll maintain that eye contact to maintain that frame, strong handshake. And once I'd had my side down of thinking, how am I presenting? Then I was thinking about the other person all the time. I'm thinking, I'm reading this person. I'll think, how can I make them feel really comfortable? I'll read their body language. Are they positioned towards me? Are their eyes scattered or are they engaged? Are they looking rushed? Where are their hands going? Are they crossed? Are they closed off a little bit? And then I would try and get them to open up and relax by asking target questions. They could make some reads about what I thought they would like. So assumptions, oh, did you just finish cooking or something disarming like that? And so once I think the approach was your frame is solid and stable enough, you can then start focusing on someone else and think, all right, now I want this person to feel comfortable and relaxed in my presence so that we can have this open, honest conversation. Because it wasn't like I was trying to scam them or anything. I just wanted to be able to ask them open enough questions so that they could consider the product. It wasn't even getting to the point of selling. It was just having that open conversation, first of all. And there were 100 barriers you'd have to break down before you even got there.
Yeah. That's very interesting. We receive information, 80% through the vision.
Nonverbal, yeah.
Yeah. And then how are you able to buy yourself time to be as visually appealed for them to give you a chance a little bit more? That's very challenging. Thank you for sharing this. I liked it.
And it doesn't even have to be. So people might look at that experience and think, oh, you got lucky. You were in a job that facilitated this kind of skill development. But this is something that's open to anyone every day of their life. You can go up to strangers and strike up conversation. You can just interact with people that you don't know on a day-to-day basis. And your mind will automatically, after enough repetition, start to pick up on the patterns. You'll think, all right, if I approach someone, I should not do it from behind them as a start or side. I should actually do it from the front so that in their peripheral vision, they can kind of see me coming. And that way, they feel less alarmed when I strike up because it's a stranger still. And I will say, I think the modern trajectory is people being more wary of strangers, being a little bit more close up. Maybe it's hope, maybe social media, maybe it's COVID, but now there is more resistance to engaging with strangers. Naturally, people are, I feel, less social and open to strangers. So you have to work around that. You have to be even gentler in your approach. You have to have reads on a person. I'll basically look at someone, I'll make a few assumptions about what I think their character is like, and then I'll gauge my approach sufficiently.
Do you have any recollection of when was your successful communication that led to, I don't know, becoming warm lead or something during your door-to-door?
The most success I've had in doing that is treating it as a very normal conversation, as normal as I can make it. I think the approach that's worked for me is not going in thinking I'm going to pitch it. I try and make it as low resistance as possible. I'll say, hey, it's just Ibrahim here. I've got this thing. Take 2 seconds. I'll be out of here. Basically, I give them as many reasons not to say no as possible. If they think, oh, I don't have time, I'll say it's 30 seconds. Sometimes I'll even say something like, this is going to take 30 seconds. And if by 15 seconds in you're not happy, I'll kick myself out. So I'll play around with it. And already they're feeling disarmed. And at some point I'll be like, the contract will get sent out to you in an email. There'll be 2 seconds of work and there's an auto-signed link in there. Anything else that you're doubtful about? And basically all the hesitations or resistances that were going to crop up in their mind, because I've already seen them 100 times over, I've anticipated them all, and there's nothing left for them to say. Sometimes they would actually be like, no, I guess I'm good though.
That's nice. I watched one trainer for cold callers, and when he called cold calling companies, he said, "Hi there, would it ruin your day if I told you this is a cold call?"
I like that.
Yeah, like, no, you won't. And it was like it's very, very simple. You're going into the totally opposite,
Oh yeah.
making the worst thing, like, would it be so bad? And they're like, no, it wouldn't so bad. And they're like, it's your way to start building your communication and rapport with that person, and you're buying yourself more time, trying to go maybe a little bit on a funny side as well, down, putting yourselves down and things like this. And it's, yeah.
It's just, I think of it as just being playful. So that, because sales has such a stereotype and a prejudice against maybe being deceitful or insincere and just trying to force something. I think one thing that eliminates all of that is just saying, or just being playful, joking around, making things as least serious as possible. And this is where, if you have a good sense of humor, it's great at diffusing the situation, making everyone feel that, especially if you can be self-deprecating and say, I know, I wouldn't want to talk to me either, so let's just get it over with. Something like that, you know.
Make my life easier, help me go out on here, guess yes, and I'll be off. Yeah, that's interesting. And as you said, like, sales have sometimes.
So yeah, based on this experience, Marco, I mean, does this sound like fun or not?
It does sound. And this morning when I woke up, I just opened my eyes. 5 seconds later, I look at my phone and I had a call, and it was for one job that I applied already, and it was door-to-door sales type of. And I was like, oh, because the descriptions, they didn't say anything about door-to-door. They say it's a warm leads, no cold calling, so. And I was like, all right, it's door-to-door.
Warm door-to-door is interesting.
So it's not only a source of leads. It's one way of doing the outreach, but also you will get leads from marketing team. So that's why I didn't get all information, but from description, I was under impression that there will be sufficient number of warm events.
This is physical in person.
Yes, but it's because it's door to door. I assume it's better results in the afternoons.
Now, would you prefer this compared to, let's say, some remote SaaS sales?
No, I would prefer some remote SaaS sales.
Okay, if you want, if you say the word, I will get you a remote SaaS sales job, guaranteed. It might take us maybe 2 months, but within 3 months, I can basically get anyone a remote sales job.
Wow.
Yeah, it's because as long as you can have good conversation with people, which you already demonstrated that, because that's the only thing they'll test in the interview. That your CV is basically, we can make it so that it accentuates your sales skills, and the CV won't be a problem. The biggest bottleneck to getting a sales interview to getting a sales job is the interview. You can just convey during that interview that you're a good communicator. That's it. That's pretty much all. Because the competition for stuff like this is early graduates with no real work experience.
Yeah.
The people who've got the academic background, but they go and get not understanding how the world works or having ideas how to communicate, especially with businesses and knowing what kind of language to use. So having that already puts you far above most of the competition.
Yeah. And I'm also graduate. Like I tick all boxes.
It would be impossible for you not to get it.
That's interesting, and I'd like to explore, and it's something that's, as I said, it's one of the skills that I would like to hone.
And if you think about it in from a different perspective, being able to get a sales job in itself, you should be able to smash if you're any good at sales. A terrible salesman will not get a good sales job because they suck at sales.
They can't sell
They can't
themselves.
sell themselves, right? So the number one test of if you can do sales is if you can get a sales job. If you can, on the interview and the call, sell yourself as a
Yes,
person.
first sale. Gold.
Yeah, that's it. They should actually frame it like that in the interview and say, "Welcome, Mirko, to your first sales call. Now sell me."
Make me give you a contract, right? Yeah. That's I like it. Yeah. I think we might finish for today.
All right, fuck it, we'll finish it. I'll save it for that.
No, finish your thoughts. Finish your thoughts. Come on, let's go.
Okay. So I did have a story I read about that I think you're gonna be interested. So in America, they have a lot of wildfires, and they have these. They're called fire jumpers or something, where once the forest or field catches fire, they'll fly these troopers in. They'll jump down, or smoke jumpers or something, right? And they'll drop these firefighters into the woodland and have to put the fire out on like really dangerous job in like high level specialization and training to do it. Now, in maybe the 90s, a lot of the firefighters were getting killed during this line of work. They were getting burned and the consequences were getting fatal. So they did an investigation of what's going on here. And a lot of the bodies they uncover from the wreckage and the fire were still holding on to the equipment. And so they interviewed some of the survivors from these kinds of events. And they said, what's going on? Because if you drop your chainsaw, all your heavy equipment, and just clear for going into a clearing and save yourself, you would be fine. And so he said, well, I'm trained to hold on to my saw. It's the one resource I have that I've been trained to use, and that is basically my lifeline. And so the training board or whatever, they went back to review the training, and they realized the entire approach they took with preparing these firefighters for this job was your equipment is your lifeline, and letting go of it means you have nothing left. It's you're over. Even if it comes at the consequence of your life. So there'd be moments where a firefighter would be like 100 feet away from a clearing, but he wouldn't let go of his chainsaw, and he ended up perishing and dying. And it speaks to this cognitive flexibility we were talking about earlier, where you think, all right, I've been trained to use this saw, this equipment, these tools for every aspect of my job. If I let go, it's over. Whereas in that instance, paradoxically, if they were to let go of the equipment and just to go and run and make for the clearing, they would survive. And the story was used as a metaphor to describe how some of the ideas and beliefs that we hold on to throughout our lives can come at our own expense.
Yeah.
Right? We don't know necessarily always what they are, but we come to believe things about how we have to do things a certain way, some of the tools we have to carry or stories we tell ourselves, and we don't even realize if we were to just let them go, we could get into the next phase of the clear and make it out.
Yeah, I like it. We have saying in my country that even the village will perish because of their traditions.
Nice.
Yeah. It just, you are not willing to consider anything else. What we did always is how we do things. Times is changing, but the ways are not changing, and that's a deadly combination.
Thank you, guys.
See you guys next time.